My main understanding is there's so much information overload and they can't really navigate those complex bureaucratic visa process. If it was easier and simple for them to get British or American visa, consultancies probably wouldn't have that much work.
Hi everyone. Just like coffee shops, it seems that education consultancies are multiplying faster than rabbits in Kathmandu. But before we get to today's topic, I am happy and proud to announce that Nepal Now is 100 episodes old. Thank you to everyone who's listened since 2020. That's when I started the show as a way to broaden the conversation about development and Nepal. I also wanted to share some of the longer interviews I'd been doing. Often as a journalist, you talk to someone for half an hour or 45 minutes, and all of that conversation is transformed into, at most, a couple paragraphs in a story. So I really wanted to find a way to share more of the things that I was talking about with these interviewees. For those of you still engaged in Nepal Now, I have just one request. Feedback, please. I know you're out there, but I really want to know what you're thinking. If you love the show, fantastic. If you hate it, not so good, but tell me anyway. And it's even better if you have suggestions. It's extremely easy to get in touch with Nepal Now. You can send a text by clicking on the link at the top of the notes to this or any episode, or message us on social media. We're at Nepal Now Pod. Back to today's topic. I've always wondered why prospective students go to the ever-growing number of education consultancies in Kathmandu. They spend, in some cases, a lot of money to get other people to fill out their application forms for university. At least that's how I've been seeing it. And so I'm very happy that in this episode I had a chance to speak to nursing expert Radha Adhikari, who explained some of the reasons why nursing students and others use these consultancies to actually apply for universities and colleges. I think her information and insights are fascinating and that you will too. So, without further ado, my chat with Radha Adhikari. Radha Adhikari, welcome to Nepal Now podcast.
Thank you. Pleased to be here.
We are here today to talk about educational consultancies in general. But before we get to that point, like I do with everyone, I'd like for you to tell me a little bit about your background, where you were born, went to school, maybe something about your career to date, that kind of thing.
I was born in Palpa and I went to school in various parts of the country in Nepal, moved around a bit. And I did my nurse training in Kathmandu about 40 years ago. And there were very few nurses around that time. There were no education consultancies or any migration ideas in those days. After that, I worked in Tansen Mission Hospital as a nurse and then went to Biratnagar Nursing Campus. I was a lecturer there. And I got married in the mid-90s and moved to London, worked there as a nurse as well in London and Cambridge and in Oxford in various places, and then moved to Scotland in early 2004. And since then, I've been working there as a clinical practitioner and also as a researcher and also an academic. I teach nursing students in Scotland.
No, that's great. Thank you. It's always nice to have someone on who has an interesting migration story. So let's get right into it. I've spent a lot of time in an area of Kathmandu called Dili Bazaar. And Dili Bazaar is maybe the heart or one of the hearts of educational consultancies, Kathmandu. And every time I'm there, I notice how the offices are moving further and further Now, not so much on Patali Sarak,
Yeah.
the main road, but on the Dili Bazaar road also. They're moving further and further up the hill. I noticed again the other day, they're just taking over. And I'll say it very clearly at the beginning. My bias is I don't know why people are using educational consultancies all the time. It seems to me that the average educated person who's planning to go abroad for university or college can go online and find all this information themselves and save their money for when they actually get to where they're going. So tell me, am I partly right about that, or am I just not seeing the whole picture?
You're partly right about it, but again, as you said, you're not seeing the whole picture. There's a big picture there. My exposure to education consultancies started when I was doing my research field work on nurse migration. I looked at Nepali nurses' migration to the UK as part of my PhD. And then I was talking to these migrant nurses in the UK, Nepali nurses who went to work there, and lots of them told me about these education consultancies. Until then, I didn't really know about them. Then I came back to Nepal and I was looking around nursing education system and process and policies and new developments. That time I visited education consultancies as well because they're a very major part of migration. And visited Delhi Bazaar, Putali Sadak, so many consultancies. You said exactly what I saw there then in 2006-07, and they are growing now, of course. Why nurses or any higher education students don't try themselves, and why do they pay to education consultancies is your question, yeah?
Exactly.
The bigger picture is there is information overload online. You can find so much information about universities and course programs and this and that. And around that time, for example, there were colleges in the UK called Hazaria colleges, and then those Hazaria colleges were taking money from international students. Hazar means 1,000, you know that, 1,000 pounds, and from international students, but they didn't really have to do any course. They were getting visa for 1 year or 2 years, 18 months. The students would enter to UK and then do their own thing. The college were just there to make falsified documents. There was no certificate or anything, no monitoring from British Home Office, and then it got exposed. And British Home Office closed all these Hazaria colleges. They were not universities, but colleges were closed. They had very good link with international education consultancies in Kathmandu, not just in Kathmandu, but in other part of the world as well, in India, in Bangladesh, you can find them everywhere. Because they kind of make very strong link and make easier for nurses and higher education students to go there, find places. But since 2006, 7, 8, and 10, they have changed a lot. There is a lot of self-regulation as well because the exposure and because of closure of some of their partners in the UK, for example. And also there was a story when I was doing my research. There was one consultancy based in near Banesar Chowk. That consultancy recruited and sent about 300 Nepali nurses to Australia with false document. And they went to Australia and they didn't get what they were expecting to get. And they were stranded and they kind of had some money, but they ran out of that money. And then they reported parents. And there was a big trouble there in Naya Banesur. I had visited that consultancy, and when I came back next year to visit that again, it didn't exist. It was bad luck. It was set up by somebody from South India, and he ran away overnight. Because of that, now they have more kind of self-regulation, and government is actively looking into that as well. There's some progress, but why students still go there? I think that my main understanding is there's so much information overload and they can't really navigate those complex bureaucratic visa process. If it was easier and simple for them to get British or American visa, consultancies probably wouldn't have that much work.
Yeah, that's something I didn't think about. I was thinking of them only as an academic facilitator. But there's the whole other visa side to it, which is, as we know, at least as big a task getting a visa as it is getting admission to some overseas college or university.
Yeah. These consultancies have link, of course, with the universities, and they know how to navigate, how to falsify document, for example, and these naive or these young students wouldn't do that, wouldn't be able to get those documents. And also they're so experienced now, they become expert, of course, in counseling. They also give visa interview training. They used to. Now they don't have visa interview. In the past, the students wanting to go to the UK would go for visa interview, and they will get that training. English language training, multiple services. Some of very, very specialist ones will provide cultural translation as well. I met one recently that serves students to go to Japan, not just Japanese language, but Japanese culture and how to speak to people and how to behave in public places in Japan, how to wear clothes and what kind of food is available there, and how to cook or how to eat, and wear kimono, for example. Many have been closed, many still running. They change names. If they close, they will have new names and move to different part of the country or close here and go to India. And also they are needed for Western higher education institutes as well, because universities in Britain and also in Australia and America, the private universities, they need international students because they bring so much money. I was talking to somebody who went to Australia to study. He said Australia's second GDP is international students, and they bring so much money. And British universities need international students as well. If they don't come, then university not getting enough government grant to run. Many use these consultancies to recruit students as well. And they pay consultancies a commission, apparently. It's so many people in different layers are playing in a slightly dodgy ground.
Yeah. Same thing in Canada. It's become a huge part, not private institutions, public, like our public universities as well. I know it's really hard to generalize talking about this, but for an average student going overseas for a 4-year degree, how much would they pay a consultancy to do the average amount of work? So find them an institution and, if necessary, help them fill out their visa application.
In the past, for nurses, when I was doing my research a decade ago, they were charging like 4,000, 5,000. I met one nurse who paid 7,000 pounds.
Pounds?
Pounds.
Wow.
That's lots of money for them to do all the paperwork and get a visa application and helping them to go to the UK. I think that she had to pay her own airfare and accommodation in the UK. But it depends. Some have paid 1,000 pounds only. If they have a strong social network and support network in the UK or in Australia, they probably don't have to pay so much. If they're very new and don't have any support mechanism, they end up paying more to consultants for that. Other students, higher education students, they said they don't really pay consultancy fees, or maybe very small amount of consultancy fee, but the university in Australia, for example, will give the commission to the consultant, 20% of the total tuition fee. That's quite a good sum of money.
This is sounding more and more like labor migration, the way it works with the employers in the host country and then the broker, the middleman, and then the migrant themselves.
Yeah. That's why I said there are various pathways, and the pathways are not very clear. And nurses I interviewed, I meet in the UK. I met so many have taken higher education route, but to be absolutely honest, it's not like that they want to do higher education. They want to work, of course, but there is no way to enter UK's labor market. They don't get visa. The one way to get into UK is to become a student.
But just in the last couple of years, the UK government and Nepal announced a very specific program to recruit nurses. Did that go ahead, or?
It has. It has. Yeah. I think 41 nurses have gone to the UK now. They were going to recruit 100 as a pilot project and then decide. But it has gone ahead. We have 100 fully qualified nurses leaving country every month as a student. The high profile government to government negotiation is very, very small. It has very small capacity.
And you mentioned also how the government is playing a bit of an oversight role. Is it improving gradually, or is it kind of, it comes once in a while and then it goes and then?
It's a very hard question. General awareness has increased definitely among nurses and also general public, because so many nurses went abroad, they didn't get the job they wanted, and some have been very, very successful, no doubt about that. Out of like how many thousand nurses Nepal has lost for international labor market, probably a couple of hundred have been very successful.
I mentioned to you before we started this that I had interviewed a nurse a few months ago now, and she was telling me how much money she earned when she started as a nurse, and it was a pittance. It was 10,000 or 12,000 or something like that per month. And then sounds like she got lucky and found a couple of good jobs. But now she's also gone overseas. So obviously money is one of the draws, I'm sure, for many of the nurses who go overseas. But I understand the dilemma the government might be in. They know they can't supply all the jobs here. People want to go. But if they accept that people are going and they're using education consultancies, is the government at least saying that it has an inspection regime or making these organizations fill out forms annually or trying to regulate it somehow?
I'm not aware of that. They didn't have anything when I did my research, absolutely nothing. Anybody could be an international education consultant. But after so much rumor and scandal abroad, they started regulating themselves. They have various groups, like self-regulatory groups, and government is definitely paying some attention to that. There's something happening definitely now. For example, when students want to go abroad, they have to get no objection certificate from the government. That is new thing. It didn't happen 10, 15 years ago. And now they must get that before they go to foreign countries for study. That is one way to monitor and see where they go.
So I thought that letter was mainly to say that this person doesn't have a criminal record and they have money that they say they have. But do you think it also includes details about their plans as well?
I have not checked the details, but definitely that gives some records, how many students are going and where they're going. At least something, some indication of like where they go and how many of them and what subject. I was trying to review some popular international education consultancies website, like how they promote their services recently. I thought I'd take 10, just a random sample, and study their website. There's so much information, absolutely so much. For example, I'm a nurse, worked in Nepal, worked in the UK, and I also research around, not just in the UK or Nepal, but done some work, for example, in Japan and also in India, also in African countries. I understand international nurse migration and health workers mobility. For me, it's difficult to understand their website, like which one should I choose? With so much information I have, I still can't decide because they go so much more than anybody can actually process, then make a decision, informed decision where to go. So they are heavily reliant on international education consultancies as well because of overload of information available online. It's not very simple.
Yeah. We're not really an advice podcast, but if someone is looking to go overseas to study, how would they start to find a place? So you said that some of these consultancies now are at least organizing in these kind of semi-formal groups and doing some self-regulation. Are they organized enough that you could look up one that's got some sort of internal certification, or do you just rely on your friends who have gone and what they say?
I would take some recommendation from friends and hear their stories. and do some research myself, read some reviews if there is any available, and talk to them and make a very careful decision and how much money they charge. And particularly, you need to be very mindful of the course you're going to do in the UK, for example, or in Australia or anywhere. Do you really want to do that course, or is it just a way to enter that country? You need to be clear about it before making any major commitment.
Yeah, because it sounds like there are some institutions that might not be 100% legitimate, and maybe they set up courses just to attract people, but whether or not they're actually helpful getting you into the labor market or actually training you with what you should know as, for example, a nurse, that's another thing. I think in Canada, it might still be this way. It's been a long time since I was in school too. If I was shopping around, I could just go somewhere and knock on the door, go in the office and ask them questions and then get an idea that way. But I don't know if the culture is the same here. Like you could just walk into one of these consultancies and say, what can you do for me? Is that something people would do? Or
you can walk in, ask questions, it's fine, and they will obviously have very promising ideas and very convincing information, definitely. But you can always look out for more information and decide. I got email from, for example, some nurse lecturer in Australian university. She was saying, in my course I teach, 95% students are from Nepal. And I want to learn a little bit about Nepali culture. Why do we have so many Nepali students in this particular course? You can see that in other parts as well. Universities will have contact with particular education consultancies in Kathmandu, and they will recruit for that particular course, whether that course is useful for your future career or the course is just as a stepping stone.
We've discussed how they've mushroomed. There seems to be a little more, at least, self-regulation now. People aren't maybe taking as big a chance when they go work with one, spend money on one. But talking about students in general now, is there one or two pieces of advice that you would give them about, okay, we know they're going to use an education consultancy because that's just what people do. Should they go to a bigger one rather than a smaller one? Or, again, stick with ones that their friends have recommended? Or are there a couple of things that you would tell your young nieces and nephews if they were going overseas?
I would recommend them to go and understand, learn about them, but I wouldn't want them to completely trust them and go with them. Learn as much as you can, but make your own decision. Understand your destination, country, contracts, your university, compare, contrast, and make choices after you have full information. I mean, I've seen that people who are from wealthy background and well-networked, they don't go to international education consultancies. They got their own network already there and good private school in Kathmandu or in Nepal. They don't need to use international education consultancy. People who have not got that connection and network will go to these education consultancies, of course. And by going there, some of them have shaped up their life, future career, but not for everyone. People are compelled to use those services and can't say, don't go there, because everybody wants to go abroad and learn and get foreign degrees, if they're genuinely getting foreign degrees. But be aware of all kind of pros and cons and make a decision.
Any chance that the education system could help educate, like in grade 12 or plus 2 or whatever, one class that talks about this and labor migration as well?
Totally. Primary, secondary school can do so much work to raise awareness. For example, we focus so much on the English language here in Nepal. We met several group of Nepali students learning Japanese language in Japan, and their recommendation was like, because so many Nepali go to Japan anyway, why don't the government system teach some Japanese so we're ready there. And I realized that the point was very important. If we give value to Japanese language, similar value to Japanese language as to English, then we would definitely prepare them better. Yeah, primary school, secondary school can do so much more. Not just preparing students for like foreign labor market. I was talking to one of the secondary school principal in Kathmandu recently. We talked about hierarchy of education or schools in Kathmandu. There's some top list schools, and all their graduates are for foreign supply. They go to foreign countries for education and they stay there. And the middle range, they are for other countries like Japan, for example. The middle range private schools will produce people for the government of Nepal. And there are government schools, and they produce for Nepal as well as for other countries, low profile countries, I guess. So school can do so much, definitely.
Everyone understands how
Yeah.
the system works.
Yeah, education system needs to address this migration issue at all level, primary, secondary, and university level as well.
Repeat something I've been saying a lot recently since I started to understand it better, which is it's not always negative. There is a very big positive to migration, be it labor migration, be it education migration. It's done a lot for the country and not just in monetary terms. Okay, Radha, thank you very much. Thanks for coming and talking to me.
Thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed talking to you about the issue I feel passionately about.
Thanks again to Radha Adhikari for sharing her knowledge about migration of nurses and other students from Nepal. If you have questions or comments, you can email me at nepalnowpod@gmail.com. Thank you also to PEI, Policy Entrepreneurs Inc., for letting us record our conversation in their studio in Bakundo for the first time. It was a great experience. Did you know that you can contribute to this show by becoming a supporter for as little as $3 a month? If you don't have a credit card, you can contact me and we'll figure out a way to make it happen. I'll talk to you next time.